Welcome back to day 2 of Resist. Yesterday you met Samaria and we you wrote about some of the problems that she has on D-Day as she prepares for the Ally invasion and what she is doing as a spy and some of the difficult things that she has to overcome in this book. Today we're going to read 3 more chapters from Allies. We're going to read a chapter called On Stage, Independence, and Dead or Alive. And as I read these 3 chapters, I want you to think about what choices Samaria makes, and if you think those are good choices or bad choices. So this chapter is called On Stage. No, the boy whispered, reaching out for her at the last second, but he was too late. Samaria stepped out into the light of the full moon, drawing her kerchief close and hugging an arm to her chest against the cold. Go potty now, Serrano. Hurry, she said. Then she looked up and saw the German soldier right in front of her. She sucked in her breath and stopped, acting surprised, as if this was the first time that she had seen him. Samaria, appearing out of the shadows so suddenly in the middle of the night, startled the German soldier, and he staggered back. Cyrano ran circles around the Nazi, yipping at him, and now Samaria had the attention of all the drunk soldiers in the street. One of the soldiers asked her in German what she was doing out so late after curfew. I'm sorry, Samaria replied in French. I don't speak German, which wasn't true. She spoke a little, the same way everybody else in German occupied France had picked up a little German, but she wasn't going to tell them that. The German soldier groaned and repeated himself in French. Why are you out after curfew? Oh, my dog was scratching at the door like he had to go pee, Samaria told them. So I see, said one of the other soldiers. He pointed at Serrano, who was, at that moment, peeing on the leg of the German soldier who'd headed off to the doorway to do the same thing. Hey, cut that out, the soldier said, hopping backwards. His friends fell all over themselves, laughing. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Samaria said, running after Serrano. The dog led her on a merry chase among the Nazis, nipping at them as he went. Your dog doesn't seem to like Germans, another soldier said. No, no, Samaria said. He loves you. Serrano put the lie to her words by biting at the heels of the soldiers who had to pee. Samaria scooped Serrano in her arms and hid a smile. High up in the sky, behind the soldiers, Samaria saw black silhouettes of half a dozen parachutes against the bright full moon. The invasion. Soon these German soldiers would have lots more to worry about, but for now Samaria had to save herself and the boy in the doorway. All right, your dog has done his business, a soldier said, holding a wine bottle. He seemed to be the one in charge. Now go on back to bed. We'll forgive you for being out after curfew this one time, but next time he pees on the rug instead. You understand? Yes, yes, thank you, Samaria said. She looked back and forth between the doorway and the soldiers. A few more steps and they would see the boy. Are you headed back to the garrison? Samaria asked. The soldier with the wine bottle narrowed his eyes warily. Why? He asked. Because the garrison isn't that way. It's that way, Samaria said, pointing in the other direction down the street. Samaria had no idea where their fort was in this part of France. Her adventures before now had taken her far from home tonight, but she hoped the German soldiers were too drunk to know one direction from another. The soldiers looked back and forth and frowned, and their leader cursed. These French villages all look alike, he said in German. He shook his head and started off down the road in the other direction, and the soldiers followed him. Au revoir, Samaria called to the soldiers as she went back into the shadows to join the boy. She worried that was laying it on a bit thick, but the soldiers walked on without looking back. That was amazing, the boy whispered when the soldiers were out of sight. I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you were going to shoot him, Samaria said. The boy blushed and put his pistol away. My name is Lucian, he told her as they stepped out from the shadows. I'm Atlanta, Samaria told him. And this is Serrano, she said, holding up the dog. Those are our code names. We work for the French resistance. I am with the resistance too, Lucian told them. My code name is Lycectus. Then help me find my mother, Samaria said. She's being held in Beirut. Come with you? Oh, Independence is the name of this next chapter. Come with you to Beirut? But that's hours from here. I can't, Lucian said. Beside, I have a mission. He pulled a pair of wire cutters from his pocket. I have to cut all the telephone lines from here to St. George's so the cabbage heads can't call for reinforcements. He leaned in conspiratorially. The invasion is happening tonight. I know, Samaria said. My mother was captured delivering the message to the fighters in the woods. If the English and the Americans make it up off the beach in time, the Germans might not shoot her at dawn with the other prisoners. But if the invasion isn't successful, it will be, Lucian told her. It has to be. He turned to leave. You better get out of here before those soldiers realize you sent them off in the wrong direction. And stay off the roads if you can. Wait, Samaria called, but the boy was all running away into the darkness. Looks like it's just you and me again, Serrano, Samaria told the little dog. She let him down, and she shook himself and fell into a trot alongside her. Serrano's family had been taken as prisoners at the same time Samaria's mother had, and it seemed like he and Samaria were the only ones interested in saving their lives. But Beirut was the biggest city in this part of Normandy, and a great many Nazi soldiers were stationed there. There was no way she and Serrano would free the other prisoners on their own. Samaria was determined to get to Beirut by morning nonetheless, to be there when the Allies arrived. And if they didn't? Samaria felt a pain in her chest at the thought. But everything in its own time, as her mother would say. No sense crying before you're hurt. Samaria left the road, as Lucian had advised, stepping carefully through cow pastures, but always north, towards Beirut. Tall hedgerows hid her from view. Overhead, airplanes droned by constantly, accompanied by the boom, boom, boom of German anti-aircraft guns. Gray clouds came and went, but in the light from the moon and the tracer fire, she could still see the tiny black dots that filled the skies like the speckles on Normandy's cows. Allied paratroopers dropping behind enemy lines to fight the Germans. Her heart swelled at the idea. We will finally be free from the Nazis, she thought. After 4 long years of living in fear, it was almost too much to hope for. What would she and her mother do then? She wondered. A little voice inside her said, Your mother is not free yet. She might never be free. She might be. No. She squashed the thought and let herself dream. She had to live with hope, not fear, or she would curl up into a ball and cry right here in the meadows with the cows. When the war was over, she and her mother would return to Paris. Yes, her mother would go back to the university and study law like before, and they would travel to Algeria in North Africa, the French colony that Samaria called her own but had never been to, never seen. The French would grant Algeria their independence for helping free France from German rule, and Samaria and her mother would no longer be second-class citizens. They and all the other Algerians would rise from the ashes of this world war and build a new, free nation. The sound of gunshots filled the air, and Samaria ducked instinctively. Fighting? Here? Now? But she was hours from the coast. The sounds of war were getting closer, but everywhere she looked she only saw sleepy cows and open fields. There in the sky the paratrooper was coming down just a few hundred kilometers away. All the other parachutes have looked like little mushrooms in the clouds, but this one was as big as a tree, and the dark silhouette of a man dangled from the bottom. The Germans must be shooting at him, Samaria thought. She didn't see any German soldiers, but the field was filled with the sound of gunfire. The man on the parachute swung down, 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 until he crashed into a stand of trees at the far end of the field. Samaria could still hear gunshots and explosion, but she had to find the man. He might need her help. And maybe, just maybe, he could help Samaria find her mother. And the third chapter today is called Dead or Alive. Cyrano yipped merrily, his little paws a blur as he ran alongside Samaria. The sound of gunfire and explosions grew louder, and Samaria ducked again, worried she might be shot. She didn't see any soldiers, didn't see any explosions. She and Cyrano made it to the small cluster of trees, and she slowed. This is where she had seen the parachutes come down, and she fought to calm her pounding heart as she searched through the ground for the soldier. Nothing, nothing. The sound of battle filled the small wood all around her, but she and Cyrano were totally alone. The trees, the paratrooper must have gotten caught in the trees. Samaria looked up, and immediately she saw him. The soldier's parachute had gotten caught in the branches of an oak tree, and he was hanging loose in the wind. He was no more than a silhouette, and his arms and legs dangled limply from his body. "Hello?" Samaria called out. She looked around, worried that any German soldier in the area might have heard her, then tried again. "Hello?" She was speaking French, and she assumed the paratrooper spoke English. He was likely from the United States or from the United Kingdom. But he didn't say anything back in any language. Has his landing knocked him unconscious? Has the Nazi shot him on the way down and he was dead? Samaria had to know, had to help if she could. "Wait here," she told Cyrano, and she began to climb. It was hard to get started. The oak's lowest branches was almost out of her reach, and when she grabbed it, it was almost too thin and weak to support her. But Samaria was small and deft, and she scrabbled up until she found a thicker branch to hold on to. Up and up she climbed. It seemed to take forever, and all the while anti-aircraft guns boomed overhead, and the gunshots and mortar explosions continued. Below her, Cyrano got smaller and smaller, but the paratroop was looking bigger, and unfortunately, less alive. He hung lifelessly, like a dummy stuffed with straw. Samaria's breaths came short and quick, and she felt tears well up in her eyes. What would she do if he really was dead? Samaria moved around the backside of the trunk to climb up into the higher branches, and when she came around again, she would be face to face with the soldiers. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and shinned carefully around to the other side. He has to be alive. He has to be alive, she told herself, and she opened her eyes. Samaria's heart stopped. The soldier was not alive, but he wasn't dead either. The paratrooper was a dummy. All right, so that's the end of today's reading. Make sure in your Canvas page you share if you think if Samaria is making good choices or bad choices. Maybe you think she's making some bad choices but just getting lucky, or maybe you see her as brave. Whatever you decide, make sure that you use evidence from the text to support your thinking on whether or not she's making good choices or bad choices.